And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. In today's episode, we have a fascinating, unique, one of a kind guest that is going to help us understand what is happening in Sudan. There is many actual attempted genocides that are happening around the world, but no one is talking about it unless it's for Palestine, which is a fake genocide that is not happening. But in this case, people have been seeing very disturbing images lately, and the world is starting to wake up to something that many of us might have known. And our guest here absolutely know more than the average person. He'll be more than happy to share with us. Our dear guest today is Haim Koren, a former ambassador for Southern Sudan. As I understood, it was the most heavily secured ambassador in the world position. Before that, he was an ambassador for behalf of the Israeli government for Egypt and other very, very fascinating countries around the region and around the globe. So without further ado, and we have Khalifa here, by the way. Let's not forget my Jewish
Hello,
brother.
Hebrews and Hebrews. And just to put it in perspective, to say the least, the disturbing images that we see in Sudan, and to say the least about our guest today. We always joke about it that we have a podcast as an excuse to meet fascinating people, and I think this is one of the most interesting people that we can or topics that we can discuss at these times, and we have the best of the best, Dr. Haim Koren. I, I I I already can tell that we will have a struggle with the time to make it only 1 hour episode because there's so much to talk about. And I wanted to, before we discuss about the history and what is happening over there, I would like to address a question to Dr. Chaim here. Like, take me to the eve that you had to tell your family about the appointment that you are going to south of Sudan. I think that in Israel nobody even knew about that, the state of south of Sudan, and it's not a very safe place to say the least. How your family reacted to that, and how did you feel once you got the appointment?
Uh, Good evening to you. As your neighbor from the local area of Mount Carmel, which I grew up on, I studied in University of Haifa my first degree, and I remember before I moved to Jerusalem to the cadet course to the foreign ministry, I in the last course that I have in my BA, I happened to plan my future by thinking that I would be concentrated on Turkey. So therefore, I started to study Ottoman Turkish and modern Turkish. And in Haifa, there are some lecturers that know well the area, both the language and the history. And also, I have one professor who used to be director of the university, that he was expert for Sudan, well-known international expert, the best expert in Israel. And before I finished studying, he brought a guest lecturer from England that will give us a course about the Nile Valley, right? Uh, this guy, grown up in Africa, knew fluent Arabic, and he started to picture a history that I never met before, because the way that we studied Middle Eastern studies, Islam, Arabic, and so on, was so different when you look at that perspective from Africa. So it was clear that my Turkish plans vanished, and when I moved to my second degree in the Hebrew University, while I was serving already in the foreign ministry, it was clear that I would go for this direction. So that was strictly academic. And then I came out as a normal diplomat everywhere, and wherever I was sent, I went to. Nobody made the connection between my academic record and the places I went to. For example, I didn't go directly to a Middle Eastern country, but first I started in Asia. I served in Kathmandu, Nepal, and then in America and elsewhere. And during my tours, I had my PhD with the same professor that came as a visitor to my University of Haifa in early stage. And he brought me to the PhD about, believe it or not, about Darfur, or if you like to be more concentrated, it's about local archive in Darfur for a population from Western Sudan who was in a process of converting to Islam from a local, uh, 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 I would say, a local religion. And by the time I had documents from archives from Darfur, very close to the place that the massacre just happened this week, and I happened to translate documents from that. That was a very poor Arabic in the 18th century, and by the time towards the 20th century, you could see by the archive how the Arabic was improved. But that's not the main issue. The main issue is what's happening to a population in a process of converting to Islam in place like Sudan, when the population is not Arab population, but rather African population.
When we're
And
talking here about the Arabic improved and the population have been transforming, converting to Sudan, we're talking about a very violent process, right? We're talking about a process that involved, as far as I know, a lot of aggression and a lot of death toll. Is
if
that correct?
only from mid 20th century when Sudan got its independence, because Sudan experienced two colonizations. One was the Ottoman one, or if you like to be academic, they called it Turco-Egyptian one from 1881, and the second was the British, and that was after the rebellion of the Mahdi between 1881 to 1889. I don't want to go into details, but that reflected heavily on not only on the borders, but rather on the identities. Now, so it happened that Darfur till 1916 was not part of Sudan. So the last Sultan of Darfur, whose name was Ali Dinar, was defeated by the British. And actually, from 1916, Darfur was part of Sudan until 2011, when South Sudan got independence, the country that I served as the first ambassador. That was the largest country in Africa geographically. Okay, but having said that, I don't forget the family. Don't worry. Uh, but having said that, you understand immediately that a society that contains three main hubs. One is in the north, which means Khartoum, Kordofan, and those areas. The population there, its origin is Arab Muslim. Arabs, as they said, they came originally from the Arab Arabian Peninsula. So they say that they belong to the dynasty of Ja'al, who was the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad. So therefore, some of the leading tribes in Sudan, in northern Sudan, called the Ja'aliyin on his name, and they are the elite in Sudan. All right, why? Because they sitting on the Nile in the Jazeera area, the Jazeera in Sudan, not the Jazeera that used by Qatar, because it's very fertile land and a lot of water, and therefore there's a lot of cotton and also cattle, very good cattle there. They exported it to the entire area, including to here, because they were both under the British mandate. And in the 30s, they started to export to us those cattle and cotton to here, and we have documents about that. So we talk, that's one center, or the most important center, the economic, political, social center of Sudan, Khartoum area, Wad Madani, and other places. The other center is in the south, which is an entirely different population. They are Christians, blacks, Africans. They are Christians, they converted from the 15th century based on the Christianity of Ethiopia, the oldest Christianity in Africa. And actually, there's no connection whatsoever between the North and the South because we're talking about Arab Muslims and black Christians. It's definitely not the same. Okay, that's a second center. The third center is the West, is Darfur. As I said, they are in a process of conversion to Islam, but they are African, not Arabs. So in fact, we have a very problematic society that doesn't agree with each other about almost anything. And add to that two more social issues, social religion issues. One is that the Islam that penetrated very strongly to Sudan was only in the 16th century, came from Morocco and Egypt, and that was Sufi Islam, which, as you probably know, not recognized by many establishments in Sunni Islam and Shiite as well. Okay, it's different from the first two waves of Islamization of Sudan. One by Prophet Muhammad through the Red Sea, crossing from Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, or Jeddah to Port Sudan or some other ports in that side of Africa, which was not successful. The other one was in the 10th century, came up from the Arab Peninsula, Sinai, Egypt, down to Sudan, basically stopped on the border between Egypt and Sudan. You can see it on the map as a very straight line called Wadi Khalifa, and actually did not penetrate it seriously to Sudan. So we have these three blocks within one nation state, right? Now, of course, colonialism added to that because
If I may, just one small question,
yeah,
just to put it in perspective, because you mentioned the Sufi Islam. Is it like, it's more mystical form of Islam that many Muslims even don't consider it as
right.
Islam because it's too very light? Like we had Sufi Islam that allowed drinking alcohol and things like that. So,
For example, but the most important thing that the establishment of Orthodox Islam rejects Sufism is because they're using or they are in prediction to the very important principle of shirk. Shirk means, as you know in Arabic, it's sharing. When a sheikh come to a degree of position that he thinks that he shared thing with Allah, that is impossible. That means that you are kafir, that you are not truly Muslims. That's very close to what's happening in Judaism, but in Judaism is not common. If you like to compare Sufism to Hasidut, do it. It's right to do so. Very similar, okay? But that's not the main thing. It's just a little explanation. Let's go back to the main issue. Now, when you have three blocks like that, and you have a tribal society, and Sudan is a very tribal, complicated tribal society, and the tribes, it depends where they're staying, they have fights among themselves and they have cooperation. It creates a situation that if you are not smart enough to build coalition, you never can control such a huge country like Sudan. Now, unlike Egypt, that is a very central rule on the Nile, and in Sudan, it's impossible. Not only because the huge place, but the so different, various tribal, I would say, legacies that you have to be a great politician to overcome and to bridge the gaps. And okay, that's happened uh, under the British. British uh, uh, preferred to take the Arab Muslim as uh, as their favorite because they setup was on the Nile and on the fertile area. There, and the British helped to build the infrastructure there in order to take the cotton to Manchester and to make a very nice cotton shirts from that. They had interest, like in Egypt, and also the
Mhm.
cattle. And so they made infrastructure in Khartoum area. They built Golden College, which became later on the University of Khartoum. They made um, um, lines of railroads in the north and so on. They neglected totally the west, Darfur, and the south because the south is on the bush and there's a lot of swamps and you cannot move there. No roads it's very dangerous. So they prefer to stay there. So that they created an elite in northern Sudan. Now, when I was a diplomat, I made my job as any other diplomat wherever I was sent. But in a certain time, I never believed that my academic studies will be in a way connected to my job because it was not even in the horizon that we somehow once we're going to have relationship with that area. And it happens that when I was in my MA degree in the Hebrew University under Rothschild Foundation, uh, I took Sudan as my major, and my MA thesis was on that. And it happens that what uh, my friend who studied with me at the same program, who became later on the general director of the foreign ministry, uh, he shows that in the end of the millennium, the 20th century, there are talks about uh, autonomy or independence to the southern part of Sudan. He called me and he said, "Look, Haim, you're the only one in the country and you are sitting in the foreign ministry. You cannot cheat me. I studied with you, I know. Although he studied something else, uh, please take this file out of me and go and run it because I don't understand anything at that." Okay. So it came
Wow.
so that in 2010 it was clear that South Sudan were going to have autonomy or independence. So I took the file on me and started to build a relationship with the newborn or the youngest state in the world up till now. And when I went there, my family told me, like you, that I'm crazy. And when I built it at the beginning, I built it from Jerusalem. I ran all the time back and forth in order to build an embassy and so on, and it takes time. So I was on the line all the time. So they didn't join me only in the end. And one of
So,
my former post was in America, in Chicago, and I was
yeah.
a lecturer when I was a consul there. I was lecturer in the University of Chicago. That's a different story. And people
So
there,
maybe sorry for cutting in, but just
I'm
yes.
ending up. I mean, people in the university in Chicago asked me, "How is to serve in South Sudan?" And I said, "It's better than to be in the south side of Chicago, which is a very wild area, while and the University of Chicago located there." Now let's go back to the issue. Okay. Now, why did I give you all this long story? Because if you don't understand the constant tension between the three parts of Sudan, you cannot start understanding what the hell is going on. And in addition to the tribal issues, to Sufism, and to the neighbors of Sudan, when you understand this location, like you can start describing this story. Okay, now here, what's happening? I said about the difficulties to rule in Sudan. True. After in first, January the 1st, 56, British left and gave independence to Sudan. They started as a democracy. Mahdi, Sadiq al-Mahdi, the grandson of the great Mahdi, was the first prime minister. After 2 years, coup d'etat, and General Aboud took power. After a few months, he couldn't manage. So he had to build coalition with politicians from the right tribes that he could run Sudan till they would get the independence. What I adding to that is when the British left, it's very similar to what happened here, because in 47 the British understood that they have to leave. So the Arab Jewish problem here, actually, they threw those potatoes to the UN, and the partition plan 181 came from the UN, not from the British. The same was happening in Sudan. They had a trouble with the North and the South. They couldn't handle it. They left it as it is. So, in fact, the war within Sudan between the North and the South started, or the civil war, if you would like to call it, started in 55, while Sudan got the independence only in 56. All right? In this war, during the year, million people were killed, 2 million became refugees, mostly out of Sudan, Kenya, and elsewhere, and more than that were wounded. So
Did you just
just
say? Did you just say million people were killed?
yeah, there were from
Million.
55. There was a ceasefire in 72 to 78, something like that, and again, but million people. The
And
very person
we're talking about million people that were killed not with the use of a nuclear bomb or
no,
heavy. We're talking
no,
about AK-47s, machetes, machine guns, own trucks, and
machetas, right,
so
right.
that is the most brutal, death that took over time, and over
They
a
have,
million people died in that
they
war.
have, they have a
Maybe,
very brutal tradition, I must
yeah,
say,
yeah.
and they unfortunately they use it and fulfill it even in 2025. And I give you another secret: they have done it also in the south, which in structure is also a structure, tribal structure. So just to understand where you're dealing with or with whom you're dealing, that's very important to understand. Okay, so you have a
Maybe,
long
just Chaim, just one thing to add so people can help just understand, because I know you're very knowledgeable about this. So, from what we understood so far, is Sudan is basically a sandbox of different religions and different tribal tension, and it's just been unleashed on one another for so long with such a heavy death toll. I actually have a personal story. One time, there was a Sudanese kid that was abused by his father, kidnapped from his mother, ended up in Israel. Me and my friends ended up adopting him and helped him until he became 18. And the age of 18, that was the part where, some of the kids were going back to Sudan because, we started having some kind of a relationship with Southern Sudan. And he was so excited that he's going to go and meet his mother. He never heard about her. He was kidnapped by her at a young age. And he was sharing with us how excited he's going to go look for his mother. And all of us in Israel, his friends, were behind him, followed him to the bus, to the airport, and, told him, please let us know, keep us updated. And we're excited to hear if he's going to find his mother. A beautiful story of a child looking for his mom. A few months later, we haven't heard anything from him. We get an email from him. I get an email. And in this email, the man is broken. He's shattered. And he shares with me that he couldn't talk because he almost died. He was on the run. The moment he landed in Sudan, he heard that someone might know where his mother is. And then he started a journey to look for his mother, but his mother apparently married another man from another tribe. And when he got there to see his mother, hello, mom, she ended up chasing him and tried to kill him because he was from another tribe that was considered an enemy tribe, and she didn't want connection. And he had to run away from her and her new husband that were trying to murder him. And for us people in the West, that was like, you can't understand. How can that be? Like, a mother will try to murder her son. But he explained to us there that this tribal conflict that we're seeing is so deep sometimes, that it even transcends family relationship, things that in the West we might not understand. Now I want to bring us zooming in right now, because I know a lot of people are starting to see these horrific images now, where we see people in Sudan being massacred in the thousands. Again, mothers and babies being toyed with. I've seen this image that is haunting me and many others, of this mother clinching her children and just having ticks as she tries to protect them, while these Muslim soldiers around her are toying and laughing and enjoying, before they're killing her. Can you explain to us what happened all of a sudden? Why did we start seeing these massacres happening again?
Okay, so I gave a long background about the background of the hatred that took life of millions at the time, but it didn't stop here, because when you have tribal society, it's very easy to foreigners to interfere. For example, Egypt always uh, considered Sudan as part of Egypt, but not independent, and because of the Nile, of course, and so on. And others are involved all the time with wars, and they taking sides, and so on. So what happened, and I now jump ahead in order to get uh, to describe our issue. Uh, many coups d'etat in Sudan. Most of them failed, some of them succeed. The most well-known are Jafar Numeri in '69, and at that time Sudan took the nationality or the identity of pan-Arabism, namely the ideology that supposed to unite the Arabs to control and to be one bloc in the Middle East and beyond. And Israel has some place that disturbed them, supposed to be destroyed, that headed in the 50s and the 60s and even later by Gamal Abdel Nasser, and Sudan joined it. In the beginnings, they didn't want Abdel Nasser to control them, and they made attempts to make a relationship with us, but it failed. And then they adopted that, and so in the 60s and 70s, they were part of the Arab League. As you are young, but I still remember what we called Khartoum Summit after the Six-Day War, which became very well known because of the Three No's Summit. That means after the Six-Day War, no recognition in Israel, no negotiation with Israel, and no peace with Israel. So that is
Is,
the
is
Three
that
No's
is that
Summit.
is that why in the Sudanese passport it says valid for all over the world except from Israel?
Only,
Passport. That's
right.
crazy.
And so that had started changing in the 80s because a new power came into the politics while Numeri was there. They always kept on the war with the South. Now they use militias. That's a very common among Sudanese. They have a local militia, one from one tribe or one sector. They used by the president, and in the 80s they call it the Murahilun. Those people worked for the ruler. They were Arab Muslims, and they started to come to the head of the south in Sudan then, that was part of Sudan, burning it, rape the women, kill the people, and so on. And when everybody came to the ruler and said, "What the hell is going on? I don't know who are they. They don't belong to me, not to the Sudanese army. I don't know who is that." They're local people probably, and he killed many people by that. The same story they adopted by Bashir, Omar al-Bashir, who make a coup d'etat in 1989 and became a ruler. And instead of calling them Murahilin against the South, they called him Gingerweed and acted against the West, against Darfur. I'll go, into it in a minute. Okay. Now, what that enables them to rule with their own people by remote control against their domestic enemies. So that's in the end that the war between the North and the South were closed in 2011, and then they have the time. Although the West is Muslim like in Khartoum, but not Arabs. And they started in 2003, 2005. Why? Because the guy that Bashir brought with him, his name was Hassan al-Turabi, who was the ideologist of radical Islam in Sudan. At the 80s, he was part of line of radical theologians like Yusuf al-Qardawi in Qatar, like
The Muslim Brotherhood. But just, you know,
he was
I
very,
want I have a small
very
question just to put things in perspective. So if I like just uh, try to sum up what you just said, is Sudan is very problematic place because of this ethnic and tribal background and the various religions we have in the West. Darfur, which is a oil-rich place. Just to add to the complicity of the things, the notion that places like countries like China actually um, kept the genocide going on
it's
for years just
little bit,
to.
it's little bit more complex. The line of
I know, but I just need to finish my question. It's very complicated, I know, and for the average listener, this sounds like Chinese, I know. But the thing is, uh, I'm trying to understand. Like they are fighting because they want a central power. They want to force the religion. They want to fight over land. What is the main topics of the conflict between those three powers, just to say?
so from the 70s of Jafar Numeri's to the 80s, end of the 80s and the 90s of Bashir, Turabi shifted the ideology from pan-Arabism to Islamism. And he was one of the most extreme theologians and political leaders who tried to enforce the Sharia, not only on Muslims, but on Christians, like he tried to do with the South. Now, that brought Sudan very quickly to be a radical, actually the only radical government, Islamist government was in Sudan. The Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, there was groups in countries, but Bashir and Turabi led the radical Islam toward terrorism. That means that in early 90s, Sudan government came together with Al-Qaeda and they gave shelter in the 90s, 5 years to Bin Laden to stay in Sudan with Al-Qaeda people, that they enabled them Sudanese diplomatic passports. Okay? So they
And
really was connected directly to the terrorism. Now, that's important to understand. Now, they also were connected to Iran ideologically from 1979 when Khomeini made the Islamic Republic then. But in the 90s, they started to cooperate in terrorism with Iran. I'll go into it in a minute, okay? What does it mean cooperating with terrorism? In 1995, when it was clear that Sudan is radical Islamic country, they have an attempt to assassinate Hosni Mubarak, and he visited in Addis Ababa in 1995. They failed, but Mubarak said he blamed directly with his intelligence, he blamed directly Bashir and Turabi that they want to assassinate him, okay, with Al-Qaeda, because they disagree, like Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, with the policy of Egypt regarding to Islam. Now, later on, they came with Al-Qaeda, make two attempts to destroy two American embassies, one in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and one in Kenya. And then that was in 98, and then President Clinton put them in the list of terrorist countries after the UN made them in the list of terrorist countries in 1995. So that meant that the sanction was so heavy that they became poorer and poorer. They couldn't bear to carry out the poor economy. So you had here a tyrant called Bashir that couldn't apply, couldn't give a good economy to its people. They enforced them religiously. They didn't enable them to have any human rights. They hated him, okay? And he was so strong that he could rule with his politics among, he was very smart, among the tribal system and so on. So what had changed, in fact, that brought us to here? In 2007, when those two Ra began already, but Bashir was there, he understood that if he wants to save Sudan, he must change his policy. So he made a calculation, and after 2007, in a foreign news, you can hear that Israeli army bombing envoys within Sudan. You don't understand why. Later on, we found out that Iran, from Bandar Abbas, sent missiles to Port Sudan, and then Sudan shifting it to Gaza through Sinai and through Suez Canal to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Okay, and they went on, and they had also a factory near Khartoum that they could form any kind of weapons and ammunition, and also to support the war against us. In 2014, they saw it's useless. And once we bombed one of their missiles shift to Port Sudan, they made a calculation and said it's not worth it. So what the hell we have to do with Iran? And then Saudi Arabia started to talk with them and said, stop it with Iran, go with us, and you concentrate you. We give you instead better than what Iran can give you. And they came out declaration in 2014-15 by the foreign minister of Sudan then and Bashir himself, that they have to stop the relationship with Iran and start to remove to relationship to let's say to consider making relationship with Israel, okay? And then America promised them 2014, 2015, 2016. Bashir cut the relationship with Iran. At the end of 2015, Sudan joined to the Sunni Arab coalition, namely Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, to the war against whom? The Houthis in Yemen, against Iran.
Oh, that is truly amazing. Like what you are describing here, you have a state that started, from the most modest form of Islam. Then it went to Pan-Arabism, which is like the socialist way of thinking that we are all one Arab big nation, that we must fight Israel and we fight the Western society and civilization or colonialism or whatever that is. Then it went to Muslim Brotherhood, and you find here very interesting thing, the connection between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamic Republic of Iran, because I always say they are the same thing. Like Khomeini, when he was in prison, he kept reading Hassan al-Banna, the founder, the ideological father of the Muslim Brotherhood.
You can go back to 11th century that you know well because of your origin, when Al-Azhar was a Shiite university. Before
Amazing.
Right. Okay, but that's a different story.
And then you have like they go jihadist all the way. Al Qaeda sending terror and supporting Hamas and all those things, and Al Qaeda, and then you get a heavy sanctions, economical sanction, and that really shifts the ideology towards, or even for a large part of the community, let's build a nation differently. Let's put it, let's seek life instead of terror, which is amazing, because if you want to be optimistic, that, you know, for the Israeli average guy, that Islam is always gonna kill us and try to force Sharia laws on us. That's not a constant. Things are
Okay.
shifting. People change,
Let's
which is
proceed.
amazing.
Otherwise, we can't go to the issues now. Now, what happened is that that's very important, the story of Yemen, because where Bashir was the ruler, and a guy named Abdel Fattah al-Burhan was his chief of military staff, and he went to Yemen with the Sudanese army to help Saudis and others to fight the Houthis, the Shiite Houthis. And most of the Sudanese army that recruited to this mission in Yemen was based on the militia who called Janjaweed, the Arab Muslim people, that 90% of the Sudanese army was based on them. That actually meant that the Arab partners in the war against the Houthis were accepting these militia that were known, and they changed their name to the RSF and not Janjaweed, because they all knew, because the ICC blamed already them in genocide. And they were actually most of the Sudanese army in Yemen. Probably they were very good. And I don't know if you remember, but it's not important. In a certain stage, the Saudis failed totally in the war with the Houthis, and the Emirate quitted from the war, but the Emirate identified that the Janjaweed or the RSF are very good fighters. Okay? Remember that. Now let's go back. Bashir was they got rid of Bashir in the coup d'etat in 2090, and who took his power was actually Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Muhammad Dagalo Khemeti, the head of this militia, the RSF, and they decided together to take this wagon out of the mud and bringing Sudan to new days. Now, the fact that they both were under Bashir and actually kept on his policy didn't change the reality at all. They and the Sudanese citizen were angry to see that nothing actually had changed. Now, America came in and said, specifically Trump administration, and said to Sudanese, if you want to move ahead, we will want to help you. So let's bring a third guy who is his name was Abdallah Hamdouk, who was a citizen, not a military guy, and he was most of his time out of Sudan. He was economist. He was expert in economy. He was communist in Sudan in the 60s. A very strong communist party, and he couldn't survive near those two generals. So first they got rid of him. Then by American pressure he got bad. Then he quitted. So actually those two gentlemen carried out the story. And when Trump initiated Abraham Accords, they both signed. Both Burhan and Khemeti signed for going to peace with Israel. Okay? That was in 2020. Now, let's explain what's going on now and how and why. As I said, General Burhan came from the elite in Khartoum, like most of his predecessors. Khemeti belonged to an Arab tribe in Darfur, Shaikia, that was used by Bashir to kill the non-Arabs, the Muslims in Darfur. Most of the inhabitants in Darfur are black Muslims, not Arabs. The minority is Arab, but the Arabs who live there, who are the force who killing the non-Arabs there, and Hemeti was from that tribe. His uncle was blamed by the ICC in genocide. He was not there then. The main genocide was in between 2003 to 2005. Almost 500,000 people killed then. Okay,
That's
nobody.
what I wanted to ask you. Like you're talking about 2020, but the Darfur genocide started in the early 2000. You say 500,000
Half a
in
million, almost half a
machetes.
million, between only 2 years, between 2003 and 2005. It kept on with waves, not that strongly, but all the time.
You know,
Because,
Khalifa, you know why I think that the activist world, especially in the United States and Europe, is such a fake activist world? Because you have all these Black Lives Matter movements, and what's happening in Sudan, to summarize it very shortly, is the brown man is killing the black man, and they're just killing them in the hundreds of thousands in the most horrific way, and filming it and recording it and shouting Allah Akbar as they do it, killing themselves, by the way. And now all these activists that just a week ago cared about Muslims and cared about Palestinians are just silent. All these activists who cared about children are just silent. Not a single one is talking. Why? Because this time it's not a Jewish person or a Christian person or a white or an American or a Western person that is killing the enemy to bring back his hostages. This time is actually a Muslim killing a Muslim and a Muslim killing a Christian, an Allah Akbar person killing I love Jesus and I love Moshe person, and nobody cared. They're just silent, and it's just despicable. Now, if you don't mind, Chaim, I have a very interesting question, because I've been following these trends of how the Western media is shifting their movement, handpicking activism that they want to pick on. I want to fight for this. I'm ignoring that. Now I'm seeing a lot of people seeing the images of from Sudan of what's happening. It's going insane, but they're starting to shift and blame Israel and Saudi Arabia. So you have a Muslim Arab raider going and just killing black Christians and black Muslims. And suddenly Israel and Saudi Arabia are to blame. And I'm just trying to see, like, how are they spinning that? In what ground can they blame Israel and Saudi Arabia here for what is happening right now that we're seeing?
okay, first I wrote, after our war here, I wrote a piece about it. I sent it to you. You can use it and you can shift it, no problem. But
Thank you.
I also said that and wrote also that how the world ignored. It's not that they didn't know, they didn't want to know. As well as now, it's not it's not Israel and Saudi Arabia. They blaming Israel and the Emirates. Who's doing it? Qatar. Why? Qatar has its own problem with the Emirates, and Emirates are blamed to be involved in what's happening in Sudan with Hemeti, which is true, by the way, partly, not everything, but Qatar using it as many other issues to go against Emirates. And by the way, I also sent you some cartoon about it, how they use it in a very anti-Semitic way. And actually, we're talking strictly about racism, about Arabs killing non-Arabs. That's all. They're both Muslims.
Yeah.
Okay?
So
It's not.
Qatar's propaganda is even reaching Muslims killing Muslims, and they choose to play with that to blame Israel
Other.
and the Emirates. It's
I
amazing how
sent
deep the
you
Qatar
few things
propaganda
that
is going.
I wrote and we wrote in the last few days about it. But let's explain. Now, when Burhan was leading the coup d'etat, that was fine because Hemeti came with a lower tribe, not in the center, that not used to be ruler of Sudan. He came from a small Arab tribe in Darfur. He was actually camel shepherd, and then he became a leader. His uncle brought him to this leadership. And in a certain point that they worked together after 2020, he wanted to make represented and be the first one who coming from a local tribe and not from the hegemony and take the power by it. And he has a very strong leadership. So he came in 15 of April 2023, rebelled against Burhan, and then started a war. Now, in this war, who actually they kill? Sudanese people. They own. So Hemeti is strong in Darfur because that's their area that they used to kill people. But the truth is that Burhan too killed many people, butchered them, if you like. And at the first stage, Hemeti, the deputy, was on the upper hand. So Burhan ran away from his palace in Khartoum and made his headquarters in Port Sudan. Up till now, he's here, and he was a little bit not on the upper hand. Now, coming back, I said in the beginning that sometimes it sounds like a local marginal conflict. But I said not only it's not local and even not regional, it's global issue. And here is a problem. Now, Hemeti is very smart, and he, by the way, I said it, but both of them signed on Abraham Accords, and both of them force the relationship with Israel, even now. Okay? I cannot elaborate, but that's the situation. Now, when they came to fight, Russians supported by Wagner forces, Hemeti from Darfur, Egypt and Saudi Arabia supported Burhan, and the other were not really involved. Now, it was happening that Emirates and Russia supported Hemeti against Egypt and Saudi Arabia. Okay? Now, keep in mind that the story was April 15, 2023. Let's go back for a moment to our war that started in October 7, 2023, few months after. What happened before then? In April 2023, you probably pay attention that there was a conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and who came to mediate? Remember? China. And he succeeded, China succeeded. The time that they created the evil, axis of evil means China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, with the proxies of Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, and all these places. And they intended not only to destroy us, but also to control, to go and take the hegemony from the US and to control other parts of the world, such as the Red Sea, such as Africa, which China controls more than 4 decades already. And they penetrated, the Russians, through Sudan, from the Red Sea, through Darfur, to what we call the Sahel zone, which means Libya, Chad, Niger, all the way to Mali and to Burkina Faso, and they succeeded. And that was usually under the French colonialism up till now. So all of a sudden, in the last 2 years, you could see coups d'etat in Niger. The prime minister, the Democrat prime minister Bazoum, was replaced by coups d'etat, and all behind the Russians were there. And they, after the coups d'etat, they said to the French and to America, we don't want you anymore, we go with the Russians. Now, they building the base, and if you see the map, you see Sudan on the Red Sea and the gate to Africa, and very close to the Arab Peninsula, how important Sudan strategically is. So all involved. Now, that's not all the story. Now, when Burhan, one of those who signed Abraham Accord, saw that he in a very bad situation, in 8th of October, a day after, he renewed his diplomatic relationship with Iran. Why? Because Iran sent him drones and weapons and to fight against Hemeti. Okay, when the Russians saw, I told you It's very complex. When Russians saw it, they
Crazy.
shifted, they moved to work with Burhan against Hemeti. So all the Ukraine volunteers who was with Burhan now shifted to move and work with Hemeti. Now, people that they brought from South America to fight with them, Latin America, also now they are with Hemeti. Okay? Very, very, very problematic. Now, the
Sandbox. It's the
story is
sandbox of war and racism and religious fanaticness. That's like Sudan have
everything.
become
You have
a
everything.
sandbox. You want to shift them to come to you, send them a few drones, they can kill other humans, they'll shift to you. You want to, it's just crazy what's going on there.
Unbelievable.
But
Now,
that's what happened when Islam is left unchecked. You know,
let's
that's
not
what happened.
a lot of detail. Bear in mind that Niger, it's not just happens that France is there or used to be there. It's a main sources of uranium in the world. So no wonder why Iran is heading to through Darfur. They're heading to come to that area because they have their own needs on that. Okay, go ahead.
I find it extremely interesting, all what you just said. But I think that, first of all, the sheer numbers are crazy. Like you just, every people in the, in the West think that Israel is the source of all evil and she's doing a genocide. And in just like the last talk you just mentioned, in the 60s, million people died. In the early 2000, 500,000 people were butchered. And now we are talking about, I've seen now pictures of people, being buried alive. And now you're speaking about how easily they shift from one part of,
Side to the other.
that's absolutely crazy. But there's also one interesting aspect of it, just to put it here for the Israelis, is that Israel is very cautious of, intervening in other places, with the exception of Sudan, because we had some experiment with Kurdistan trying to help them, and then in south of Lebanon. But Sudan, due to its strategic place, it's a place that Israel has a stronghold and actually doing a lot of work for with its allies. But from what I understand from what you just mentioned, that it's very complicated because all the superpowers are basically fighting with Sudan. Is it just because it's on the Red Sea? Is it like what is the main thing that attracts all those powers to come to Sudan?
First, you can see what happened. It became very clear to the public in the war now with Gaza, because after the Houthis maintained their issues with the ships that moving on the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea, it was clear how important this area is strategically to the world. Now everybody is involved, and that's very including Sudan, but Sudan is not the only one. The rest are very involved. But
Clinton.
what I'm trying to say is that if it was the hands of Hemeti and Burhan, we might have been solving it. But so many interests are involved with big superpowers that becoming a bit, and they still want a relationship with us. And when I asked my people in both sides, what the hell is going on? And Burhan people, how come that in the 8th of October, they shifted the relationship with Sudan? So he said to me, and it was published. He said, not to me, or not only to me, he said in the media, he said, you didn't want to supply us with weapons. And so we shifted and moving to the Iranian because we are ready to take
Wow.
weapons even from Satan in order to survive. And against whom? Against their own people
This
that
is
they work
insane.
together. Now, we said, and rightly so, we cannot supply weapons when you killing your own people. It's not I mean, it's why should we supply to you and not to the others? Say we're not supply. So they were disappointed, and he said, "You made a mistake. Now we're going with it." So uh, that's
Speak
the
about
situation.
dance with the devil, the saying, dance with the devil. That's exactly it. They're your friend if you let them have advanced weapons so they can kill in the name of Allah their own people. And if you stop giving them the weapon, then they will go with their enemies or your enemies because not because they're good, not because they share any common values with you, just because they want to kill their own people. That is mind blowing. But, ladies and gentlemen, that's why I keep saying in my show, Islam unchecked always falls down to catastrophe. That's why the only Muslim countries you see around the world that are actually doing good are the ones that have very strong leadership and very strong regulation that doesn't allow Muslim brotherhood, doesn't allow radical forces from outside to come and provoke it into violence, because inherently it's much easier to provoke into racism and violent in that kind of ideology if you compare it to Judaism and Christianity. Not that they are not. No religion is immune to being manipulated to be used as a violent tool of violence, but what we're seeing around the world when it comes to that religion particularly is just extremely easy, and you need to have very strong rules to put in place to prevent it. And Sudan, just like you said, has been run by a bunch of maniacs who just want to kill their own people because of the color of their skin and because of their
Mansour, I
religion.
see it a bit differently. If I
Please.
truly respect your point of view and it's valid, but reality is complicated in sometimes. And I think that the story here shows us how political Islam, what we know as Islamism, it takes a decade or ages old conflicts. The Arab in Sudan are traditionally, the slave traders, and the other clan is the slaves, and you have this anonymous, this hatred between the two of them, and a leader or some prom- uh, prominent figure could take Islamism and use it as a tool against the other side, just for to rally the people and find way to gather up the people and to say, yeah, it's for the name of Allah, but everybody knows it's a lie.
Right.
So this is how I see it.
No, that was exactly my point.
I
That it's
just
easily
remind you
manipulated to violence.
that is the bloodiest conflict in the world today, worse than what's happening to people in Yemen, worse than it happened in Congo and Rwanda right now, and they don't want to go into it. The media in the West, they refuse. They prefer to concentrate on other issues, our issues, Ukraine issue, not here.
That's interesting how the media is handpicking which issues they want to bring to the table and which are not, regardless to actual facts on the ground, like regardless to real numbers and real intent. There's a place where there's way less deaths and there's no intent for a genocide, dictionary intent, but they would put all their focus on that. There's a place that there's a real genocide, real actual numbers to support that genocide, and a real intent. Just ignore it. But anyway, we're getting close to the end here. And I just want to say that this was, a fascinating conversation with you, Dr. Chaim. You are a book of knowledge and history about what's happening in Sudan. Obviously, you lived the culture there and you breathed it. And I'm sure you have a lot of your contacts there that you still can talk with them. If we can, in just, let's say, 1 minute, summarize right now who is killing who in Sudan, so people can understand what is happening here. Just bullet point, summarize it, and then we can leave our viewers. Please leave comments and just share with us everything you have here to let us know.
Okay. In from the beginning of this millennium, uh, basically Muslim Arabs from the north killing African Muslim from Darfur area, which is the same nation state. Okay. Recently, this is going on during in the last almost 25 years. The leadership of Sudan, namely both Hemeti, who is the butcher from Darfur that made recently these awful things in those days, uh, joined to Burhan, who were relatively was more, I would say, more relaxed than him, but he is also butchering people, Sudanese people, who are revenge to Hamiti and so on. And altogether, he also was blamed 2 months ago by the UN by convicting genocide, what they said about Hemeti before. Now, how can you run a country when you make it genocide from all your people, with the help of, it's a very, very problematic issue.
Insane.
And unless uh, uh, some superpowers will penetrate very strongly to the issue, I don't see how they're going out to the right direction from that situation.
I was thinking someone asked me today, a dear friend of mine that had the same friend that I shared the story about from Sudan and others. He told me that it's heartbreaking. He told me, what do you think can possibly be the solution? And I said, it's a very complicated issue, but I think the start of the solution could be what we saw right now Donald Trump doing with Kenya, which is coming and telling them, if you keep killing Christians, we're going to come and we're going to kill you. And I think, or put sanctions, or etc. I think until the West will stop ignoring this issue and will start demanding that they stop it, or else they will suffer the severe consequences. These people that are killing Christians and Muslims just because of the color of their skin or religion in Africa, they're humans, and they're greedy humans, and immoral, greedy humans. And the moment that they will feel that they're about to lose what they gained and their money and their power and their life, they will start reconsidering. But right now, they're seeing the best thing that can they see in the world. They see that in Israel, there's not a genocide, and everybody's focusing there. Meanwhile, they're committing a genocide, and no one is talking about it. So they think, okay, listen, the media is on our side. They're giving us green light. We can do whatever we want because they keep killing. We can kill million. They don't care. They're all focused on Israel. They're all focused on America. No one cares what we're doing. So actually, the world leaders and the world media is playing to their hand by empowering them to continue. And until the West will start putting its boot on the ground on the table and says enough is enough. We're not gonna allow you to genocide Christians. We're not gonna allow you to genocide Druze, to genocide Muslims, to genocide any group. Basically, we're not gonna allow it. It's gonna continue. That's what I think.
You know,
You.
and it's absolutely disgusting what the media is doing, because there's a pattern. Once Muslims are killing Muslims, that's no news whatsoever. Yeah, they can keep, and once you say something bad about Islamists, they will say that you are Islamophobe and trying to wave it in your face. But
Well,
they are actually the racist ones, because there's a these people doesn't matter 100,000, 200,000. Like for the past month, you have tens of thousands of people being killed in the most heinous ways, and people, once you say genocide, they speak about Gaza, and that's disgusting. That's absolutely
That's
disgusting.
crazy, crazy. But anyway, Khalifa, we wanna tap it into the 1 hour. We did 1 hour and 8 minutes. That's great. Uh, Chaim, toda raba, shukran, shukran. Why did I say shukran with a Hebrew accent? Shukran jazilan.
you got used to it.
I got
In
used to it.
Arabic, in
Yeah,
Egyptian Arabic, you would say إحنا مشكرين جدا جدا.
احنا شاكرين جدا جدا. عايز ايه رايح فين.
يسعد
So
به.
Iowa. So thank you very much. I just want to quick thank you to all the guests. Easy, that's thank you so much for this. I don't know which currency is that is. I was fascinated to see. It's Japanese. Where is that from? Thailand? Anyway, I'm gonna Google it later on. But thank you so much for this super sticker. Ainora, thank you for being the legend that you are. And moderating the show for us today. And again, I want to say this is our guest for today, Dr. Haim Koren. You can go and find him on social media as well. Follow him, read the books and the articles. He's obviously a hub of knowledge when it comes to these topics with a lifetime experience and boots on the ground experience. So we want to thank you so much, Dr. Haim, for coming here and giving us from your time. And with that said and done, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind everybody the old saying in the book, don't do anything stupid. And in general, don't do anything that I would do. Or in general, just make good choices and your life will become better. And in that case, stop supporting radical Muslim jihadists anywhere in the world. They're not your friends and they don't want to do anything good. And start standing actually for what is right. And right now, it is to shed light about what is happening in Sudan. Jokes aside, it's a serious crime against humanity that is happening there, and many innocent women and children are paying their lives. Doesn't matter which religion, Christians, Muslims, atheists, tribal. They're just innocent people that are paying a heavy price. And if there's any way that we can help, sitting from our home is actually by sharing videos like that and sharing the voice and sharing the images to bring it up to the attention of the world, because we've seen the way that it works. When no one gives attention to something, the world just ignores it. And that is a little bit that we can do. But with that said, Khalifa, do you want to say any final last words here?
There's I still have so many questions to ask, like how safe did he felt? How is the food? How is the country? Like we didn't touch anything about
It's
this
impossible. There's so much.
very fascinating place,
Next time,
but
inshallah.
Next time,
inshallah, next
inshallah.
time it will be. It's gonna be next time, maybe in Hebrew, because there's so much to discuss about it, and it's important. We as Jews just suffered the genocide, the attempt from the jihadists in Syria, and I think that all the sane people with all the languages need to put an end to these ideologies. Sorry, my cat here is attacking my screen. Hey,
Yeah.
Ginger. Just
I've noticed he's been touching the keyboard. Yeah.
yeah. She's been doing
Okay.
some.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll
Thank you
we'll
so
talk
much.
later. Bye bye, everybody.
Yeah, like God bless. Bye bye.